The human race requires judgment.
You're going to judge us? You get all your ideas from comic book villains?
Alright people, what's going on? So this is Renegade Operative, and I wanted to create an off-the-cuff video about a tier list. Every content creator under the sun seems to be making these tier list videos based on their favorite criteria of movies, characters, video games, filtering out what was good, what was bad, and what was average. I will leave the links in the description below to the website, but I wanted to create a tier list for a new Comic Zone discussion based on the Marvel Cinematic Universe and ranking all 22 films. I want to talk about the quality of each film, why it's in a particular tier, and hopefully get some insight and make this video fun for you guys in case you want to participate. Now, I want people to know that this is just my opinion. If you like some of these movies and I dislike some of them, or I change my opinion on them after watching them, then that's totally fine. We all have opinions change, but I think this is definitive for me, so I want to just get my opinion out there, talk about it, and see if I can make a good discussion being off the cuff. I might ramble a little bit, so be aware. But the first movie we're going to start out with is the God tier movie list, and that is Avengers Infinity War at number 1. I enjoyed Infinity War a lot. I think Infinity War was a movie that does something that a lot of comic book movies doesn't do, and that's kill off a lot of your favorite heroes with the titular and menacing Thanos. Thanos comes a knocking after 22 movies after being referred to in Age of Ultron, and he finally comes and he goes on a journey. He goes on a journey to collect all of the Infinity Stones. This movie really felt like the biggest gathering ever. You had characters that came from space, other universes, Earth, everywhere else. This movie was like just a giant combination of every phase to this point. A lot of combinations like Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy that sets up future implications. You have characters coming together like Captain America and Black Panther. You have all these crazy wide scale fights that seems like it's so impossible to create a movie like this. It's like at a breakneck pacing, but you understand why Thanos is on this journey. You understand why he wants to go out there and liberate half a life on all planets because they're using up way too many resources, and this was something that was an extremist idea that got him kicked out by his own race for people that are uninitiated. A lot of people say that they wish they had the original plot line from the comics back, the Infinity Gauntlet comic arc where Thanos goes out and he kills everyone, snaps the whole universe for a piece of pussy from Lady Death. But I think we see liberties all the time in comic media like this, and I really didn't mind. Like, I love when the villain is established to be a strong character, a villain who is someone that is on a crusade, but you understand why he's doing the sacrifices he needs to make and how those sacrifices really impact him, how far he's willing to go with killing his own, you know, stepdaughter Gamora, and all the fights that happen, man. Like Spider-Man, all the people that tried to stop Thanos, and he's just a force to be reckoned with. It's a really good movie. It has its nitpicks here or there. I think they made the Hulk into a flaming turd, honestly. Hulk and Banner, I mean, you can understand the dynamic of Hulk getting tired of Banner's crap, but he gets no love in this movie. I kind of wanted to see some Hulk smash, but overall, all the characters, they do get a chance to shine in this jam-packed breakneck movie. I would highly recommend it. I thought Infinity War was fantastic. Anyway, next up we have Iron Man 1. Now, Iron Man 1 is essentially the start of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This was back when it was a little more no holds barred. You had terrorists dying, you have Tony Stark at his snarkiest, and it really solidified Robert Downey Jr. in that role. It's like if you really thought about billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, and overall snark, you would get Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. I can't believe that fucking rhymed. I really fucking can't believe that rhymed. That's so fucking funny. I'm keeping that cut in this video. Now, this movie might suffer from the origin story trope, you know, telling the origins of a character and building him up slowly but surely until he embodies who he is. I am Iron Man. That is the definition of Tony Stark. He's really careless and self-serving in the beginning until this tragic accident happens, and he grows slowly but surely as the character that we all know and love today. I do think it's hilarious as fuck seeing terrorists get blown up, and it's double hilarious when you go back and look at Rhodey in that movie and see how he's portrayed by, like, who is that fucking guy? I forget his name. Terrence Howard. He's portrayed by him, and like at the end scene where you see the War Machine suit and he's like, I'll be back, baby. Oh, you know he won't be back because he'll be replaced by Don Cheadle. This is the pinnacle of Iron Man movies due to how, you know, gritty it could be, due to how fun it could be, due to setting up, you know, the stepping stones for Iron Man in general. But let's continue on to the final movie in the God tier list, and that is Captain America Winter Soldier. It's just the tone alone in Captain America Winter Soldier that was refreshing to see. It's like a triple agent, double agent spy movie. Everyone is getting the knife stuck in their back. You don't know who's who. Hydra is going absolutely bonkers, batshit insane, and they are infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. as we speak. It's a lot of shit that happens, like fucking Nick Fury gets shot. It's crazy, man. That man almost dies in this movie, and you don't know who to trust. You really feel like you're in that character's footsteps when it comes to like their entire process of thinking, like, who do I trust? Where do I go? I'm going on the run. Can't trust anybody. Everyone's trying to kill me. And Winter Soldier really brings this whole Terminator-esque experience into the mix. That man is literally the fucking Terminator. He is going out of his way to make sure that everyone who associates with S.H.I.E.L.D. is history, and that's why I love it so much. The whole fight on the highway, man, that shit is incredible. You see people getting blown away, cars getting blown up, people getting pulled out of cars. That shit is fucking crazy. And then you see the whole big reveal, which I saw coming a mile away if you read the comments, which is Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier. So it has that whole personal dynamic with him and Captain America, and Cap really going out of his way to try to save his best friend, to the point where he lets his guard down and he says, like, fuck it, you know, Bucky, I really care for you. You're my friend. I'm with you to the end of the line. Beat up on me as much as you want. That movie is just so emotional at the end. I think that was the best Captain America movie ever. I love Civil War, but this is just a lot more fantastic, a lot more grounded, a lot more of a personal story. And that's why I really enjoyed Captain America the Winter Soldier. Flaws. Where are the flaws? Well, I really do think that the Russos, they have that tendency to put in shaky cam. Honestly, it's like a love it or hate it affair with most people, and I kind of dislike shaky cam in some of their movies. I believe their best choreographed fights was indeed in Infinity War. That's why if I had to give any nitpicks to this movie, it would be some of the shaky cam. But I wouldn't devalue all the extensive work they put into the fight sequences because they are choreographed well. It's just the shaky cam is there to be annoying. Whew, now I gotta start picking up the pace, so I gotta go a little bit faster because I got some more tier lists to go through. So on the great tier, we have the first movie here, which is Avengers Endgame, and I believe some of the flaws are a bit more apparent here. This movie has a lot more mistakes behind it. This movie has a lot of plot contrivance with the time travel bit. You could easily say, why didn't they go back and do something else that could have ended this conflict with Thanos faster? But I digress. It still is a great time. It really has some hardcore fan service, some hardcore resolutions that are really great, some stuff that comes in from Age of Ultron that is awesome. I don't want to really get into all the details here, but I want to say that movie is just, fuck it, let's get into the details. Cap wielding Thor's hammer, Thor wielding fucking Stormbreaker and fucking Mjolnir at the same time. You got so much shit going on, so much exposition, Back to the Future references, Cap fighting Cap. Oh my god, the ending sequence where all the characters are fighting to stop Thanos, they come back to life, and you have that colossal scene where the Avengers are assembling. Oh my god, the fan service. It's just it's just staggering, and some of the endings for some of the characters is sad that Iron Man dies, really sad that, you know, Captain America retires but he gets this happy ending with Peggy. It's a lot of emotional weight when they really pay it off, and sometimes it works really well. Just like I said, some of the plot contrivances are really weird and they could have done things differently, and some things go awry, but that's what you get with time travel stories. It's not going to be all perfect, and I believe sometimes it could be just a fun good time without over analyzing things. So there you go. Next up, you have Captain America Civil War, which is the overcomplicated plan by Baron Zemo to break up the Avengers, which causes tension. You know, you get to see the heroes fight each other, and it just leads to a lot of, you know, cool moments. You got the introduction of Spider-Man, which was really cool. He's fighting like Bucky and Falcon and all that. The airport battle, everyone remembers it. I think that, of course, the reason why this movie isn't God tier is because I think the other Avengers movies supersedes it on some of the action going on, but it is an enjoyable time, and you really get to see, you know, the whole shattering of Cap and Tony's relationship, which I thought was kind of cool. You get to see Black Panther also in this movie being introduced, and him going after Bucky Barnes because his father got killed. He believes that the Winter Soldier is the terrorist at the UN bombing, and like I said, you know, it really pits people against each other, and it's something that you probably wanted to see for a long time, because some people in their own factions, they do not get along, they do fight, they do have disagreements, and it's not really particularly fully comic accurate to the original story, because, you know, a lot of shit happens afterwards. Captain America dies, but it is still thrilling to see nonetheless, and I think they were really honing their craft. The Russos, they were really honing their craft when they got to this movie. Next up is Captain America the First Avenger. This is the first Captain America movie that establishes his origins, and they show a lot of backdrops with World War II, him being in the war. It's a period piece movie, and it does something different. That's why it's in this tier, is because it's cool seeing Cap, you know, in the war, fighting against the Nazis, Red Skull, him using guns. I thought it was a nice little touch of a movie, and the ending is just like sad, man, when he says, oh, you know, he wakes up like 70 years later after he's been frozen, and he tells someone, you know, I had a date. Oh well, the person I had a date with is like 80 years old, and it's too bad for me. So it's really like a super downer of a movie when it all comes together, and I thought it was greatly done. I like when period piece movies could be interesting in superhero movies. You don't see it often. Like, you don't see World War Hulk or something to that effect, because they just haven't done it. And I hate how the Hulk doesn't have his own solo movies anymore, like Planet Hulk and all that stuff, but they do reference it in Thor Ragnarok, which we'll get to like later in the timeline. So I want to just establish that Captain America First Avenger, really, if you really like Captain America, I think you're gonna like that movie. Next up is Doctor Strange, which is, it's a weird movie. It's weird. It's really weird and quirky, and you got all the magic stuff really just coming into the spotlight here. You have like the Ancient One, the beginning of Baron Mordo becoming evil. You have the things that the Time Stone and the Eye of Agamotto can do, which is turning back time, and you see the ramifications of that at the ending. I thought that Doctor Strange was cool. I mean, it had blood and shit too, which was pretty goddamn. I was like, oh shit, there's some bloodshed going on in these fights. And I believe that one of the main people, at least the antagonist, he was also in Death Stranding. He's going to be in Death Stranding. I think it's Mads Mikkelsen. I thought he served this purpose, you know. I wish he could have been used to a greater effect. That's the problem with some of these MCU movies, is that like the villains there, they really don't get the opportunity to shine, and that's kind of one of the things that I have a big gripe with when it comes to Black Panther. I don't think they should have killed most of Black Panther's villains, if I'm being honest, if they're setting him up. But hopefully they set him up for something interesting in the future with, I'm not gonna spoil it now until I get to that point. I'm just saying, I had a problem with the whole villain killing thing, or just getting rid of cool villains and them not being substantial enough. Either way though, Doctor Strange is a visual crazy masterpiece. Like the stuff they pulled off, the whole world bending thing. Oh my fucking god, that shit's just absolutely insane. And it's just basically a journey for Strange to fix himself and realize why he got to this point and how he fucked up his hands and trying to get better. They kind of allude like at the end credits that maybe he's not over the whole shaky thing with his hands, but then that's ultimately resolved in later movies as Strange becomes more of a master practitioner in his own sort of like Doctor Stranginess or whatever going on. I don't know. I don't have the perfect word for it, but I know the handshaking thing is not brought up anymore, and he seems seemingly okay now in regards to Infinity War and Thor Ragnarok. Alright, so my neighbors, they have ignorant ghetto music blasting outside, so forgive me on this tier, but let's continue on. So let's talk about Guardians of the Galaxy 1. Honestly, it's weird. This movie's weird because I do enjoy this movie more than Guardians 2, and even though I think both villains kind of suck, I'm not gonna lie. I think Ego and Ronan the Accuser, whatever his name is, the blue guy that gets killed, I think they both suck as villains. Ego, he has more of a personal connection, so he would be somewhat slightly better, but that's not saying much. But I feel as though with Guardians 1 and Guardians 2, I think the first film has something better to it. I think the pacing is just a lot more better than the second one. But there's the first half of this movie, which is absolutely fantastic, and then it seems like the second half of the movie is falling a little bit flat on its face, whereas with Guardians Volume 2, the first half of the movie is but the second half of the movie is great. It's so weird to explain. They have that little distinction, but I would say the first film is just better, introducing us to all the space hijinks with these crazy pirates coming together after being locked up in an Ultimax and doing all this weird shit. Rocket's cool, Groot's cool, fucking Quill, he's funny as fuck. I think all the main titular characters really shine through the role, and it really does wonders. I just don't like the villains for any of the Guardians movies, but I would put the first one over the second one. Next we have Thor Ragnarok. It's the best Thor movie of the series. It's funny. I wish Thor was a bit more like his Infinity War counterpart, like if they had that just in a soul movie, like him being, you know, kind of brooding but having that sort of same charisma for certain scenes like Chris Hemsworth does. I thought the stuff they were doing with Planet Hulk was also pretty damn, you know, entertaining. With they had a reference to Hulk beating down Loki, slamming him down, so like brother, it happens to Thor as well, and I thought that was a nice callback to Avengers 1. It's a lot of fun stuff in this movie, but you're gonna want, like, Hela was cool too. I thought Hela was a great villain, going around fucking people up. That shit was solid. The problems with Thor Ragnarok does feel like nitpicking, because I do feel like they tried their best to create the best Thor movie they could, but it does kind of feel like a Guardians movie in some ways, so the tone is a little bit undesirable in my opinion. It's still great. Goldblum is great. It just could have been better. I think if they had like a more cool tone to the movie outside of, you know, just being a comedy, then it would be something absolutely fantastic, but it doesn't reach that bar. Best Thor movie, but not the best MCU movie in general. Now we have the good tier, which is Ant-Man 1 to be precise. Ant-Man 1 was the misadventures of Scott Lang becoming the Ant-Man, becoming this master thief. Now there's a lot of controversy with this movie in particular because it was supposed to be directed by Edgar Wright before he dropped out, and they decided to pick up Peyton Reed. Peyton Reed had to pick up the slack for this particular movie, and I thought he did, you know, a decent job with it. That's why it's in the good tier. Obviously, the problem with the Ant-Man movies is that they feel kind of disjointed within the MCU, and obviously, once again, Yellow Jacket is just by the numbers in this movie. He's funny. The faces he makes are absolutely hilarious, and the way he flushes a guy down the toilet is just, It's just infamous. It's infamously gonna be in your mind forever. You know, characters, cool. It has the introduction of Hank Pym and all these other people. Hank Pym should have been introduced earlier because he is the guy who ultimately makes Ultron, but you know, that's Tony Stark's job because they had to take so many liberties. So that kind of sucks that he's not the one that creates Ultron, but it's whatever. I think that they tried to do the best that they could with Edgar Wright really fucking around on the production schedule to the point where they couldn't salvage that relationship. It's a really unfortunate thing. I think the movie could have been a lot better if it was filmed to be more significant to the MCU and if it was filmed to have more fundamental values behind it. It is fun, don't get me wrong, but it feels like there could have been more added to the experience. I thought the whole Falcon versus Ant-Man fight was cool. Like those references that they did put in and those callbacks to some of the earlier scenes that Edgar talked about, I think that was cool. But ultimately, Ant-Man, while it's a fun movie, it does feel like it could be better than what it is. Good, but not great. Good, but not God tier. Next up, we have Iron Man 3. Now, a lot of people, they really hate this movie because of the whole Mandarin bit. The Mandarin is one of Iron Man's greatest foes. He is a guy who knows Kung Fu and can fuck you up, and he has a lot of powers, and you know, his arcs are prevalent within the Iron Man lore in the comics. But he is fake Mandarin in this movie, and basically I think that Iron Man fights some volcanic guy with volcanic infused powers at the end, and the fake Mandarin turned out to be Ben Kingsley, and it's just wasted potential when you figure out that, well, this guy that they hyped up that they're possibly going to relate to the Shang-Chi movie and they're gonna do some crazy martial arts stuff from there, that could have led to some cool scenes in the movie, some cool fights. But no, basically Mandarin in this movie is some kind of jackass that's like rich and he's hiding in a bunker like Osama bin Laden, and he has like a bunch of sluts laying around. I didn't like that revelation, but everything else about the movie is fine. And usually, you know, I criticize Shane Black like a lot behind the scenes. I think that he's kind of garbage. He only has like 2 hits to me, and that is basically Lethal Weapon 4, I believe, and this movie in particular, Iron Man 3, where it's not exactly the greatest film due to the problems I listed with the Mandarin and the wasted potential that was, so they have to go back and shoehorn him into another movie. But the directing here and everything else, and seeing like Tony with a gun, I thought that was fine, you know. I thought that stuff was cool. The ending could have had a bigger payoff, but I think the movie served its purpose. I think it did what it was supposed to do, which was show Tony in despair and see what kind of man he was when he was forced into situations where he didn't have the Iron Man suit. And you have that cool moment where like Pepper Potts, she infuses herself with the power of the main villain and they just basically throw down a little bit. I thought it was really, really awesome. So Iron Man 3, man, it's not as bad as people say it is. I would just say it's really hampered by the poor twist that they have. I'm gonna steam through these really quickly, but next up we have Avengers 1, the first big superhero team up with the established characters, with the Avengers coming together. Colossal hit, can be overrated. I think other Avengers movies that came out, like Infinity War, Endgame, it is definitely better than the first Avengers, but it is cool seeing how this is when the big team ups really started to formulate. This is when the big team ups really started to come together from all these movies being created. And you have to give the movie respect where it's due, but right now, like I said, due to other emotional elements, other emotional beats, better villains, I believe that there are better Avengers movies out there. Same thing can go for Age of Ultron. Sure, it was a bigger cast, bigger characters, they tried to put in more stakes obviously, but it really isn't as good as the other Avengers movies after it, like Endgame and Infinity War. I feel as though Age of Ultron was also, you know, putting in the whole fact that we have Josh Whedon here and he's doing the whole romance stories and all these subplots and trying to make these characters a lot more connected. I get where he was going with it, but you know, the Hulk wanted to fuck Natasha and everything was going from there, and it had some cool moments, don't get me wrong. I do think that Ultron, he could have been a better villain with more fleshed out motivations than just crashing an island into Earth, but still, this set up the premise of just the characters coming together and these dynamic moments coming to life, with Tony fighting Hulk and the Hulkbuster, with all this other shit going on with I think the Romanoff kids, they could have been utilized a little bit more better. I do like that Scarlet Witch, she continued to be a badass, but I really hate that they killed off Quicksilver. I really do. I fucking hate that decision. I wish he would have been more prominent, but who knows, maybe if they do this multiverse thing with X-Men, maybe it could be a chance that he comes back. I don't know, but yeah, I do think that I like the setup more for Age of Ultron, you know, setting up Tony's PTSD, setting up his dreams of what would happen if the Avengers just died in front of him and he was helpless and he couldn't do anything, and ultimately he couldn't do anything to stop the snap in Infinity War. I like the setup more than some of the bits in the actual movie itself. So let's move on now. I did enjoy Age of Ultron, don't get me wrong, but I feel as though some parts are just disjointed. You want to see the team together, obviously. You want to see more of that, and they do provide that, but they fail on creating something from a more emotional, mechanical level. I can't really explain it. It's like the death is not as good as I wanted it to be. And that's Age of Ultron's main problem. It's like, you know, the setup is great and all, it's nice, it leads into other bigger and better movies, but they don't serve to help the movie that all this stuff is being set up in. It's like they take one step forward, 2 steps backwards. Next up is Guardians 2. I already kind of talked about it earlier when I talked about Guardians 1, so just the cliff notes here. I do love Yondu's death. I thought that death was really impactful. The way he resonated as a father figure to Quill, I really like that. It feels like the first half of the movie, gags, shenanigans, it doesn't feel as deep as you would want it to be. The first half of the movie is kind of forgettable, but the second half, when all the revelations kick in, is where things really start to shift into gear, and that's what I like about it. You know, I like the whole dynamic of Quill finding out more about his father doing all this shady, nefarious shit right under his nose, and it just gets much better. You know, he goes out of his way, he goes on this mission to try to stop ego at all costs, seeing how it affects people, seeing how it affected his own family, seeing how it is affecting his loved ones. I mean, it's something that is really good in the second half, but the first half not so much. But seeing Taserface get like fucking destroyed by goddamn Rocket Raccoon is nice. All right, we are at the end of the good tier here, so we have Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, people do have their legit issues with this movie, and I do agree with a bit of them. Like, this is the movie where, holy shit, I'm about to like fucking die and burp, so I apologize, but this is the movie where it feels more like Iron Man Jr. than Spider-Man. Iron Man is in this movie quite a bit, but I know why they did it, so I don't hate it too much, because they want to get rid of the whole origin story. They don't want to deal with the whole, oh, Uncle Ben got shot like 5 times. So now we have a new father figure mentor, which is Iron Man, which is cool because it does have payoff at the end of the day, but that payoff did not happen in this movie. So Spider-Man Homecoming, it is essentially Spider-Man going around doing Spider-Man stuff, being in high school, dealing with the hijinks from there, dealing with responsibility. It is weird that they had this whole controversy of, oh, did Spider-Man have any spider sense in this movie? I don't think he did, because he kept getting like sideswiped by all these characters. But Vulture is cool. Vulture is actually one of the few great villains that I'm glad they kept alive, because Michael Keaton was really killing it. And then you had the whole twist and revelation with Liv, I forget her name, the girl that Spider-Man wanted to take out. She's basically like Vulture's daughter, and they have that conversation in the car where he's like, yeah, does she know? And he's like, no, she doesn't. And he's like, you fuck with my business, you could take my daughter out for a good time, not that good of a time, but if you fuck with my business again, I have to kill you. So I mean, I thought that was pretty great again. And it has like those Spider-Man moments where he's like, okay, I could just walk away from this, and he decides not to. He decides to get that vigor again, become responsible, and understand that Vulture is the bad guy and he must be stopped. Again, you know, it's a lot of people do prefer the mature Spider-Man, the mature guy, the guy who knows his shit but still struggles with a lot of adversity. And I think people forget that's what Spider-Man is. He struggles a lot with trying to do the right thing, and sometimes it ends up not being so right. Sometimes, like basically Iron Man said, sometimes people get hurt in the process. So I like this coming of age story for him, even though it does have its problems. Like I said, I hope for future Spider-Man movies, especially Far From Home, that they take off the training wheels and that they actually develop great characters around Spider-Man that doesn't hold his hand all the time. So Spider-Man Homecoming, good movie, but does have problems. Now we're going to the meh tier, and the first movie I see, and I've debated with this heavily, so I'm just gonna list off both these movies real quick. The first one is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, I've seen this movie several times, and I did a grief review. I should do a grief review, actually. I retract that statement, where it just feels the most disconnected to the MCU. It's like, I think the way they released this movie, it was bad. It was really bad. Everyone wanted to know what happened after Infinity War, and you have this movie, you have this Ant-Man movie that just focuses on more of Scott Lang's antics, and you just want to get back to what happened with Thanos, what happened with the snap. You do get that gratification at the end of the credits, but I don't know, I just wish that this film, even if they were doing a standalone movie, I wish they could have done more to make it stand out, because at the end of the day, this movie was just by the numbers Ant-Man light, and it wasn't as impactful as I thought it would be. Ghost is cool, and Wasp is like pretty awesome as well. I think Wasp is the best part of this film because she goes around, kicks a lot of ass. I mean, some of the fight scenes with her are super cool, where she enlarges, turns big, turns small, and just beats people's ass. I believe one scene in the kitchen was just great. Absolutely. I don't think that Walton Goggins, I don't think that guy's character added anything. He was just some bumbling wannabe mob boss that was just comic relief, and he was another example of a villain that was not taken seriously at all, which sucks, because I think they could do something for Ant-Man villains to make them compelling in their own story arcs while keeping them small scale, standalone, and also adding something to the table, but it just didn't feel that way here. He felt like a bumbling gag. Ghost, I don't even consider her as like a full villain. She's more of an anti-hero because they try to do their best to fix all the particle problems, and she's just a stepping stone in people's way. I do like that dynamic with her and Lawrence Fishburne, but that's about it. I believe that if you look at this movie, objectively speaking, you just wish that it brought a lot more to the table than it did. And that's why it's in the meh tier, because it's watchable. It's not super shit, but it just is average at best, and it could have done a lot more to the Ant-Man formula, but instead it doesn't, and it came out at the wrong time next to Infinity War, and it doesn't add anything from there outside of the post credits. So it's just, you're basically like, you're a fan sitting there wanting like, oh, what happened after Infinity War? I need to know. And this is not the movie to follow that up on, in my opinion. Next up is Black Panther. I'm gonna label just Black Panther. Now, I have seen it twice already, and I do think it has that overrated factor. That's why I put it in the meh tier, because again, this is T'Challa's story after we see all the events that happen in Civil War. Him going back to his homeland, you get a good idea of how Wakanda operates, and it's not like the worst movie in the world, but it's also a movie that I feel is on equal footing as Ant-Man outside of just the Wakanda homeland antics. It really doesn't reinvigorate any form of what a comic book movie should be. I think that one of the problems that Black Panther has as well is killing all of the main villains, which is one of the consistent issues within the MCU, except this movie makes it worse by killing off Claw and Killmonger. A lot of people spouted off like political psychobabble about how the movie is racist, how the movie is anti-racist, and I think the beginning message that they tried to give you was it doesn't matter where you come from, you can rise up and be better than what you are. This is proven by absolutely fuckery, if I want to say if that's like a phrase or not. Absolute fuckery going on with Killmonger being ousted out as a child, being left behind because his dad died and he was like from Wakanda and he was stuck in America, and he decided to come back, take over as king. T'Challa saw that, you know, he had to rise up, he had to look at himself, he had to dig deep and come up and rise up as king himself. It's like a Lion King plot, man. Sometimes you really think about it and you know, like, all this stuff happens in the comics with the whole purple goop and people getting their powers that way and being worthy of the Wakanda panther that comes from the sky and talks to you, and souls that talk to you while they're dead. All that shit happens in the comics, but it feels like just a live action version of Lion King coming of age. We've seen this time and time again. It doesn't break the mold, it doesn't break the formula, which is why it's a decent watch, but it's not the greatest movie in the MCU. Next up, we have The Incredible Hulk. I know it's sad, right? We really get into all this shit with like Hulk and stuff like that. I think Edward Norton, he did an okay job, but The Incredible Hulk, it really, like I said, it's also one of those movies that feels disjointed. It's one of those movies that also feels like they could have did more with the source material. Again, it's like it focuses on the action heavy part of Bruce Banner. It's like they knew people complain about seeing less Hulk heavy shit in the original 2003 movie, and it was essentially like a family driven plot based synopsis going on with Bruce, you know, having to deal with his father, and his father killed his mother. Now currently it seems like he's on a fugitive hunt to try to alleviate himself from the gamma radiation in his body to stop being the Hulk and live a normal life. And that's also kind of by the numbers. You understand why, but the story feels like it doesn't have a lot of depth to it as well. But the action is cool, on point. I love the shit with like Blonsky running around, jumping around. He has the whole super soldier serum, and then he walks up to Hulk and he's like, come on fam, what you got? And then he fucking kicks him, breaks them all up. He turns into the Abomination, and they have that big showdown in Harlem, which Luke Cage is like, well, what the fuck? You know, I was like, oh no. But still, it's like, that was cool. The action's cool, but they haven't really found that Hulk criteria that blends in good action, good storytelling and characterization, and Bruce really being the monster and trying to remedy this with his friends, with like all the people that he knows. And it's a lot of references in this movie, a lot of setup that they tried to do that falls on deaf ears, that doesn't really happen because there is no solo Hulk movies anymore. Like, they tried to set up the leader in one scene and it's like, what the fuck, you never see this guy again because the Hulk is regulated to Avengers only movie status, and it's really disappointing. So any setup in this movie is potentially squandered because of the revelation that Hulk is with Universal, and sometimes Disney doesn't want to compromise with giving Universal a cut of a solo Hulk movie. So it feels like all setup is squandered, and that really makes it suck. It sucks really hard because of that. It's disappointing. It's not the worst film in the world compared to the shit tier, but it's just meh when you really look back at it. Same goes for Thor. I mean, with the whole... Now, this movie, again, it's not shit. It's just when they tried to humanize Thor and he was in the American world and he was slamming down cups and all that stuff and eating breakfast and getting needles in the ass and all that stuff, I feel as though it was a little bit disjointed. It's not worse than Thor the Dark World. Thor 1 is definitely better than Thor 2 by a long shot, because they actually do build shit up and they actually do set shit up instead of butchering all of their setup with Thor the Dark World. But it's a lot of Jane Foster elements that really I didn't like. I didn't like the whole building romance with those two, even though it was canon to the comics. I think that it should have been regulated to the side and we should have got more time in Asgard. A lot of people complain about that movie, saying that there's not a lot of Asgard shenanigans going on with this one. They were right. And while, let's move on to the shit tier, because this is where we really get into it. This is why Thor the Dark World fails, because it tries to give you like a lot more action and a lot more shit with the Dark Elves, but they suck as villains. The whole shit with Jane Foster is dumb. You got a fucking naked man running all over the place. Like, who wants to... What were they thinking with this film, really? This is why Hemsworth said, I'm tired of Thor being so boring and not doing anything that is a layer experience, because I want something more out of my character. I can actually act. I can actually do this. I can actually be a comedian. And that's why I said, you know, Ragnarok, at least it has character compared to the other Thor movies, because I feel it doesn't have character. Things don't really stand out outside of Loki. And Dark World, like I said, this is where you talk about villain sucking on average movies. Like I said, the mid tier, it has nothing on the shit tier. I think this is where the villains are absolutely trash, meaningless, nothing that's done in the original Thor movie even compares to how bad Dark World was with the Dark Elves. And this is where we got shit with the Reality Stone, and even then it wasn't that interesting or memorable. I thought the final fight was the final fight is just so goddamn funny and ridiculous, with them teleporting all over the place, and it feels like, you know, the main Dark Elf is like Nightcrawler and Thor is like just bouncing off everywhere like a goddamn casino tilt machine. I don't know. It's like so fucking funny. It's like a pinball going all over the place in the final sequence. And that's like the only entertaining part of the movie, in my opinion. I think they tried to double down on stuff and it just wasn't funny with the humans. They also tried to introduce more action, but the stuff that was going on, the conflict, it wasn't interesting or good. And I just couldn't get behind this movie. I couldn't. I mean, it's good riffing material, don't get me wrong, but still, they could have done a lot better than that. Thor the Dark World, pfft, thumbs down. Same for Iron Man 2. Again, it was an example of them trying to double down without any layers involved. You have like Justin Hammer running around claiming, oh, I'm better than you, Tony Stark. I can do all this shit. I could do that. Oh yeah, look at me, flash my cock. And it's just, once again, a movie that is unfounded, unneeded. I mean, the War Machine scene where Tony teams up with like War Machine and destroys all these Iron Man robots under control of Hammer is nice and all that, but it feels like, again, everything is just not solidified, not good. Like, and it goes back to the bad guys and their motivations. And I did like Vanko, you know, I like Lasher going around slashing shit up and all that stuff, but and it's Mickey Rourke, so you gotta have a few laughs here or there. But still, it's like, I don't know, it's like it wasn't as compelling as the first one, even though we're past the origin story stage. That's cool, but you need something to progress that is bigger, better, tells more exposition, and Iron Man 2 does not do that. It's cool we saw what's her face, Black Widow. Black Widow was awesome to see. That was cool. Outside of that, you know, why not have some conflict with Tony and Black Widow? Why not have some more stuff going on with these characters that was actually interesting? Why not get better Iron Man villains? Why not give them better motivations instead of them being like absolute preschoolers in this movie? Like, I could piss longer than you, etc. It feels so really just, it has no impact at all. It feels so unearned when you think about the potential this movie could have had. And then let's go to the let's be real, you haven't seen it tier, which is Captain Marvel. Now, a lot of politics going around this movie. A lot of people don't like Brie Larson saying stupid shit, and of course, a person saying stupid shit, a lot of people will go out of their way to combine the work of the artist and the character. And I heard that Captain Marvel is a character that doesn't have much payoff. She comes across as a person who didn't really accomplish much in her own movie, her own origin story, and that is a problem. If the resolution doesn't match up with the beginnings, then it feels all for naught. But that's not the reason that I didn't see this movie. I didn't see it because of personal politics or anything like that. I always will watch something and judge it accordingly before giving my final opinion. The only reason I haven't seen this movie is because I was like, okay, I'm not going to pay a ticket for it because there's other movies coming out and I kind of want to watch, you know, Mission Impossible, all that stuff. So I felt like, you know, one of those moments where you're like, this movie is straight to Blu-ray, straight to DVD for me, and then I'll do a review on it later and try to do the best that I can to analyze what's going on. That's how I felt. I felt like I'm not seeing this in theaters because other movies are taking my attention. Let me wait until it comes on Blu-ray and then I'll give the movie a fair shake and see what's going on there. Again, I can't say how good or bad it really is. I'm only talking about hearsay right now until it actually is in my hands and I watch it on Blu-ray and I give it a shot and I see what happens from there, and then I'll give my opinion on if people are right, if there really is some political nature involved, which from what I heard from Chris Stuckman, it really isn't all about SJW propaganda. I do believe that people are associating that with the artist and what she's saying and what she's saying on her timeline. I mean, yeah, you can go ahead and criticize that, but if it's actually not in the film itself, then I can't really say that's a negative unless it's actually there. Unless those identity politics are actually prevalent, then I really can't talk shit about it until now. That's the one thing that I will say is that, once again, quoted from Chris Stuckman, sometimes the internet likes to reach and grab for fabricated beliefs and things that really aren't there, like when they said that, oh, in the new live action Aladdin, Genie was the worst thing in the movie when supposedly he's really not. Oh, like in Black Panther, there's actually a lot of racism going on, a lot of people being racist to each other in the film, and they're trying to give us this heavy-handed message when it's really not. That's something that the actual negative toxic fan base that believe that shit created. That's their narrative, so I will defend that. If it's actually there, I will criticize it. Surely I don't like politics in any sort of movie unless, you know, maybe I'm being a hypocrite because one of the most political driven stories from X-Men is centered around how politics was working back then. That's why Stan Lee written the X-Men, because he wanted them to be anti-bigotry. So I don't know, I do like those stories when it's written well, but I don't like forced diversity or forced politics and real world stuff just being ham-fisted in there unless it's really written good. Like, there's good political stories like MGS3, but again, I have gotten on quite the tangent and I'm almost like 50 minutes in this fucking video, so I should wrap it up. So this is Renegade Operative. This has been a long motherfucking video about my opinions on all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies and this distinct tier list and what I think of them and more. You are free to agree, disagree, comment below, let me know, like the video, share it if you enjoyed it. And once again, I look forward to hearing from you. Take care, peace out, be good people, and once again, like I said, It's my opinion, so I want to get your opinion. If you agree, disagree, like I said, talk to me. Let's hit it up and we'll see what happens. Until then, people, take care. I'm out. Peace.